Okay, lighting is gonna be so bad. It's terrible weather outside and I have my ring light going and like...
We're just gonna have to work with what we got today.
Also, I have like crazy allergies flaring up right now. So if my nose is red and I'm like sniffing and I sound really congested, it's because I am. It's because I am congested. So starting off on a great foot. Hi, yes, it's been a while. I was a little busy, but I am back. My hair is gone, so just don't complain about it or like it's just doing its own thing. Oh my God, look at my hair. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is gonna bother me all video too. So like, just don't, it is what it is. So,
okay.
Welcome back. It's June. Thanks for waiting for so long. I have been writing and rewriting and I have my computer right here. So if I'm looking off screen, it's because I have a lot of notes and today's episode is things that I just wasn't about to memorize. It's too important for me to try to memorize. So I'll be reading a little bit. So if you see my eyes darting, it's because I'm reading off of a screen, but I'll try to pop things up over my face if I think that it's necessary. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Today's episode is sort of a broad overview of what is borderline personality disorder, what is a personality disorder in general, and how do the symptoms, at least in my experience, present in real life. I will be doing different episodes about each of the symptoms more in depth, but I did just want to get a video out there as sort of a basis to really explain what borderline is in general, just before I went into it. So that's what this is. So what is BPD? BPD is classified as a personality disorder, hence borderline personality disorder. And there are 3 clusters of personality disorders. I'm just gonna say PDs throughout the video. It's just way easier for me. So there are 3 clusters of personality disorders, A, B, and C. There are 10 total PDs in existence and all 10 are classified under either cluster A, cluster B, or cluster C. Cluster A is what's called eccentric or suspicious, and this includes paranoid PD, schizoid PD, and schizotypal PD. Cluster B is erratic and dramatic, and this includes antisocial PD, which is more commonly known as sociopathy or sociopathy, borderline, which is what I have, histrionic PD, which is just a word for attention seeking, is really sort of what they boil it down to, and narcissistic PD. Cluster C is categorized as anxious or fearful, and this includes avoidant, dependent, and obsessive compulsive PDs. So BPD actually used to be called emotionally unstable personality disorder, which, I mean, it does make sense, but I believe that's a little bit reductive of what it actually encompasses. So they decided to rename it borderline, and they called it borderline because it really borders in between neurotic and anxiety disorders and psychotic disorders. So BPD falls right in between neurotic and psychotic. So we really get the best of both worlds, don't we? And just before I do move on, I did want to briefly talk about the nomenclature used when discussing things like mental illnesses, so mood disorders or personality disorders or anything like that. So for example, schizoid personality disorder does not mean schizophrenia. It's a totally different thing and it sort of gets tossed around in the same way, which I do think can be pretty harmful. Same thing with narcissistic personality disorder, right? That's a diagnosable disorder, which is different than saying somebody is narcissistic, right? Narcissism is a trait or a characteristic of somebody, while narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnosable psychiatric disorder. So it is very different. Same thing like saying sociopath. Sociopathy is antisocial personality disorder. And so many people will say things like,
oh, this person's a sociopath, she's a sociopath.
That's really harmful because For people who do have something like antisocial personality disorder, everyone's saying sociopath as the same word as crazy or psychotic. It really can be very damaging, and it really, in my opinion, creates this atmosphere where people who may have personality disorders like NPD or APD don't want to talk about them because you're scared that you're going to be grouped into society's mind as a crazy person. And that really is very, very harmful. Now, I will do a totally separate episode. I think I'm going to actually do it next on the way things like BPD are portrayed in the media, in television and movies, on social media. I really do want to get into that because I think it's very harmful, sort of the dialogue that encompasses talking about mental illnesses and sort of personality disorders as a whole. It's not great. And I do think that people really need to be a little bit more cognizant when they're just using terms just haphazardly, like
sociopath or psychopath or narcissistic.
It's just not a great place for us to be in. I will go into that further though, so moving on. I will be reading off of my screen right now, so I'm really sorry, but I do not have this wording memorized. But I will right now go through the 9 symptoms that are a part of BPD. There are 9 symptoms in the DSM-5, which is used by the APA and different psychiatrists and psychologists to diagnose mental health issues and mental illnesses. So in the DSM-5, these are the 9 symptoms of BPD. So the first is frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment by friends and family. The second one is unstable personal relationships that alternate between idealization, which is
I'm so in love, this person is my dream man,
and devaluation, which is
I hate him so much, he's worthless, I hate him.
This is also known as splitting. The third is disoriented and unstable self-image, which affects moods, values, opinions, goals, and relationships. Fourth is impulsive behaviors that can have dangerous outcomes, such as excessive spending, unsafe sex, reckless driving, or misuse/overuse of substances. The next is self-harming behavior, including suicidal threats or attempts, periods of intense depressed mood, irritability or anxiety, etc., lasting a few hours to a few days, chronic feelings of boredom or emptiness, inappropriate, intense, or uncontrollable anger, often followed by shame or guilt, and finally, dissociative feelings, disconnecting from your thoughts or senses of identity or out-of-body type of feelings, and stress-related paranoid thoughts. Severe cases of stress can also lead to brief psychotic episodes. So in order to be diagnosed with BPD, you need to meet 5 of the 9 criteria or symptoms. I have 9. I present with all 9 symptoms, some more mild than others, some more severe than others, but I do still have, whether on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 or 10, I do still present all 9 symptoms. Now, in discussing those symptoms, they do sound scary or intense to some people, and I totally get that. The conversation around mental health is really touchy, and I thought it was interesting that I read recently some sort of little quote that said, talking about mental health is great, and I think society is very used to talking about mental health. Now, talking about mental illness is a very different topic. I think people are very scared still or hesitant to breach the topic of mental illness, true mental illness, not just doing yoga every day, meditation, taking a mental health day from work. Now, all of those things are really important, and I do think that those are worth talking about. And I'm very thankful that at least we're at that level where we're talking about taking a mental health day off of work and normalizing behavior that's sort of along those lines. However, in discussing those symptoms of BPD, I do realize that mental illness can still be very scary for people to talk about. We have normalized things like anxiety and depression and even bipolar disorder to a certain degree. These are things that I think they're terms that are tossed around a lot, and people open their mouths to stick up for mental health and being concerned about mental health issues. And that's amazing. But we need to take it a step further where people aren't scared to talk about like the 9 symptoms of borderline, talking about the more stigmatized mental illness, true mental illness, not just a disorder, or talking about ways to keep your mind healthy, but really digging in and talking about what mental illness can do, how we're fixing it, and how to talk to people who may be going through these kinds of things where you're not scared of them or you're not nervous to talk about these things with people. So just a little bit of background about my treatment plan. I am in a intensive 12-month outpatient treatment program, and this treatment program consists of
weekly individualized therapy, 1.5 hour weekly group therapy sessions, phone coaching, daily homework assignments, daily diary cards where I, fill out this long form, every mood under the sun, happy, sad, joy, shame, guilt, talking about all of the struggles, all of my anxiety. I do this on a daily basis.
Now, I also have been going to my individualized therapy once a week for an hour for 4 years straight. So all in total, I'm looking at about 5 to 6 hours of therapy or therapy-related homework every single week. That's on top of
working a 40-hour-a-week job, starting my painting business, keeping up with my social media apps, doing my makeup and, pre-pandemic, pushing my makeup artistry out there, running my typical daily errands, doing things around the house, cooking.
Everything that a person would normally be doing. Now I'm adding 4, 5, 6, 7 hours of therapy a week on top of that. So it is intense. But I believe that's something that I'm willing to do to better my own mental health and to be able to talk about it in a healthy way and to create dialogues that I think are really important in society, and to hopefully, like what I'm doing now, spread a lot of awareness so it makes mental illness not as scary to talk about. So just to make these symptoms a little bit more personal, and like I said earlier, I will make a different episode, I think, about each one of these symptoms and really break it out and go into a more in-depth conversation about them. But just for a little bit of information about how they may present in real life, I will talk a little bit about me in this episode as a brief overview. So I first started feeling that there was something different or unique about me from as early as age 5. I knew that my brain functioned in a different way. I knew that my emotional regulation was not the way it should be as early as kindergarten. So I think that, everybody is different. Some people aren't triggered by their borderline until they're 16, 17, 20 years old. Sometimes when you're 10, 11, 12. I was 5 years old when I noticed that my brain was definitely different than most people. So I did, in one of my therapy sessions a while back, really try to summarize for each of the 9 symptoms. I tried to very quickly summarize how it affects me and my life. So again, I'll be reading. This is straight from some of the notes that I've used in real life. And like I said, it will go more in detail, but this is just something that I think people should know about me and people like me who experience something like this, who may be scared to talk about it, but it's me, right? I'm not afraid to talk about anything. So the first one is an intense fear of abandonment, even going to extreme measures to avoid real or imagined separation or rejection. So I wrote,
this cannot describe me more perfectly. Stalking, both online and in person, predatory behavior, physical violence, intense lying. I do it all to avoid somebody abandoning me.
All of that is true. Again, I'll go into more detail later. Second, a pattern of unstable, intense relationships, such as idealizing somebody one moment and then suddenly believing the person doesn't care enough or is cruel.
Again, this is me in every relationship I've ever been in. I tell somebody I love them, and then 30 minutes later, I'll tell them that I hate them.
And in those moments, it is confusing because I do truly feel that way when I'm saying those words, whether it's because of a perceived and fake situation going on in my head, or I really may have been triggered by somebody's behavior. It really doesn't matter. I really truly will believe that I absolutely
hate somebody one minute,
and then the very next minute be groveling at their feet,
saying how much I love them and how I can't imagine my life without them.
And it is confusing for both me and the people involved. But there's really nothing that I knew to do about that, obviously, until I started therapy. Rapid changes in self-identity and self-image that includes shifting goals and values and seeing yourself as bad or as if you don't exist at all. So I consider myself a very well-intentioned person, but a very misunderstood person. So throughout most of my relationships, I have either thought,
I absolutely am so much better than this person. I deserve so much more than the way that I'm being treated. How could this person possibly think that they're respecting me or valuing me? And I just deserve so much more.
To then immediately, it could be as quick as one day later, some situation happens and I'm thinking,
wow, I cannot believe I have this person. I am just such a horrible, shitty person. I don't deserve this person at all. How could they possibly like me?
To then another day later going,
wow, this person is terrible, but this is what I deserve. I deserve to be treated like this because this is my life and this is how I treat people, so I should not expect any better treatment in return.
So it can be very confusing, and it does lead to a lot of instability where I don't even know how I feel about somebody one day to the next, depending on the mood, the environment, the situation, maybe a fight or a really good day. It's very, very confusing. The next one is impulsive and risky behavior, such as gambling, reckless driving, unsafe sex, spending sprees, binge eating or drug abuse, or sabotaging success by suddenly quitting a good job or ending a positive relationship. I've experienced all of this except for really sabotaging a job or a very good relationship, in my opinion. The other ones have definitely been intentional. So I've always been known as an impulsive person. For example, just a couple examples, right?
Like when I was younger, in my teens and early 20s, I thought it was the most amazing thing to go down a Chicago highway driving 90, 100 miles an hour. I thought that was thrilling and exciting, and I didn't understand why anybody else wouldn't want to put their car into 7 RPM and gun it and try to hit over 100 miles an hour on like a typical Chicago highway. Very, very lucky that I never got into accidents, didn't really get in trouble with the law. But I just pushed boundaries and pushed and pushed and pushed and didn't understand to not push boundaries.
Spending sprees, right? I would spend
hundreds and hundreds of dollars in one session, one sitting, regret it the next day, cry, tell myself I'm never going to do that again. And then a week or two later, go out and spend hundreds of dollars that I didn't have because obviously it made me feel good and I was impulsive and I never thought about consequences before I acted.
Binge eating is something else, right? If you've known me for a very long time, my weight has fluctuated
up and down, up and down. I was really overweight as a kid, and then I lost a ton of weight in high school, and I got down to close to 110 pounds. I'm 5'5", by the way, and it was not a great place for me to be, and I'd weigh my food, and I bought a food scale, and I wouldn't eat X amount over calories or weight for the day. I was really wearing my body down and getting anemic, and but then I would swing the polar opposite way, and I would eat like crazy and not do anything. And I got up to around 195 pounds in college, and I fluctuated this 80 whatever pound difference, and it would go back and forth and back and forth. That wasn't a slow trajectory. That was, I'd go from 115 to 130 to 120 to 150 to 140 to 175 to 140 to 180 to 150, etc.
And my weight has always been like that because I have a very unhealthy relationship with food. So the next one is suicidal threats or behavior or self-injury, often in response to fear of separation or rejection. So while I'm very, very fortunate to not be suicidal and to not have any self-harming tendencies, I have used it and quite frequently used it as a manipulation tactic, as a threat. When I feel like somebody's trying to leave my life or break up with me or walk out, I've done very, very crazy things.
I've thrown myself in front of a car and told people to run me over. I've whipped knives out at myself and at other people. I've threatened to kill me and other people with knives. I've jumped on people's backs and tackled them to the ground so they couldn't move. Tried to lock people in my apartment, tried to steal their shoes and their phones so they can't leave.
A lot of different things, which I'll get into later, but it can be really intense and it can be really aggressive. And all of these are putting my life at risk and putting the other person's life at risk. Not a good thing, but it's something that is worth recognizing. So the next one is wide mood swings lasting from a few hours to a few days, which can include intense happiness, irritability, shame, or anxiety, etc. My entire life is a mood swing. There are days upon days where I can wake up angry, right? There's that waking up on the wrong side of the bed saying, and that would be very true for me for days on end.
I would just wake up angry, irritated, not know why, and my entire mood for days would be just down the drain.
But then something great could happen to me, and 30 minutes later, I could be ecstatic, as if I was a different person. There's been situations where I've been in a physical fight where there's been punches swung and injuries that have occurred. And, 30 minutes later, I'll say,
well, I'm so glad I got that off my chest. What do you want to go do for dinner tonight?
And it really confuses people because they're like,
you were just trying to hurt me and now you're asking me to go out to dinner.
And it's really hard to explain, but that's just the way that my brain works. And it's just as confusing for me as it is for other people involved. The next one is ongoing feelings of emptiness. This one is the one I experienced the least, I believe, out of all 9. However, sometimes I have wondered if I deserve to be alone for the rest of my life. Now, that's a combination of gaslighting from other people. I haven't really had many relationships end. Romantic relationships, and sometimes even platonic relationships where the person doesn't say,
you're crazy, you don't deserve love, you're unlovable and you're unable to love other people, you don't deserve happiness in life, you need help, etc.
And when you're told that by dozens of people, especially your close romantic partners, when they break up with you and they say,
you're never going to find love, you're unlovable, you don't deserve it,
you tend to really start to believe it. And I'm not victim blaming, or I'm not making myself a victim here, because I do know that my behavior has caused a lot of these people to say those things. But I think a lot of it is because those people have never understood mental illness, or they chose to not understand borderline in my case. And you really start to believe those things. So when you see everyone just walk out of your life over and over and over, and you can't maintain friendships, you can't maintain stable relationships, you really do start to believe that you don't deserve it, and that being alone is what your life is destined for. And that can cause a lot of feelings of just longing and emptiness. And it is easy to push aside by distracting yourself and doing other things and going out. But at the end of the day, there are plenty of days where I feel like I'm not deserving of love and I don't know how to love other people, so I'm just never gonna have it. It's depressing at times and it is sad. And I obviously know now that that isn't true at all, but because of borderline, I just can't help but feel that way sometimes. The next one is inappropriate, intense anger, such as frequently losing your temper, being sarcastic or bitter, or having physical fights. Now, I am all of the above. I get full of rage. I have been a physically aggressive person my entire life. I'm always bitter and sarcastic. Sometimes I say things that I really, at the end of the day, don't mean. If I look back on in retrospect, really hate that I've said and really regret saying it, but it doesn't ever stop me from doing it in the moment. And that is because I have zero regulation skills. And yeah, physical fights. I'm not like one of those people who starts a bar fight out in public. When it comes to really intimate relationships, like my romantic partners, sometimes even my parents, I have been incredibly physically aggressive and very physically destructive.
I like to take photographs, cut them up, take favorite articles of clothing or sentimental mementos, destroy them completely. I have been known to get into a lot of physical fights, throwing punches, jumping on top of people, really bad stuff. And
that's, in my mind, was the only way that I knew how to get frustration and anger out. And every time I do something like this, it's always met with immense guilt. Like,
this is all my fault. Every person who doesn't like me, every relationship that's ever ended, every time I've had a fallout, it's always my fault.
And it just kind of eats up on the inside. Even though I can't stop these events from happening, it doesn't make it any better. And I do end up feeling really remorseful and regretful and very self-blaming, which really, it builds up inside of you and it makes you feel like you're a terrible person at the end of the day. And the last symptom, which I think is honestly the worst for me, and I think it has created the most problems for me in my personal life, is periods of stress-related paranoia and loss of contact with reality, lasting from a few minutes to a few hours. The paranoia I experience is extreme and it is intense, and it is definitely, especially when I am stressed out. Stress-induced paranoia has led to everyday paranoia for me, but it is especially bad when it is stress-induced. Now, what does that mean? So sometimes I detach from reality, and sometimes I remember situations or conversations entirely different than either the way they happen in real life or the way the other person remembers them. Now, there is that saying,
there's 3 sides to every story: one person's, the other person's, and then the truth.
In my case, it's not so cut and dry. My reality and my remembrance of reality can usually be far, far, far from what actually happened. And because that is my truth, I am convinced that is what really happened. So when somebody tries to say something to me, it is like gaslighting in a way, or I perceive it as gaslighting, because that is absolutely not the way it happened in my mind. This can lead
to a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, so a lot of negative emotion.
Because it truly does make you feel like you're going crazy. Now, what does that mean for me? So the paranoia can be something as simple as
everyone is lying to me, to everybody's out to get me, to, more specifically for like a romantic partner. I'll always think they're cheating on me.
And I mean, what's unfortunate for me is a lot of times I have been, and a lot of times those suspicions have been founded and they have been grounded in reality. And I've unfortunately found a lot of things that I wouldn't have liked to find, but that fuels the paranoia, because even if that person isn't doing anything to hurt me, I still think they are at all times, and I cannot help it. When it comes to friends, if I'm in a group of friends, if I'm sitting in a circle or at a bar or in somebody's apartment and I'm just hanging out with my friends and their phones go off and they look at their phone,
I am convinced it is 100% true in my mind that they are talking about me. I think everybody is always talking about me. I think that they're always gossiping about me, talking behind my back, making things up about me to other people. And when they get a response and they smile or they look at their phone and they giggle, I am convinced it is about me.
So it creates a lot of distrust amongst me and my friends, and whether they know it or not, a lot of them probably don't even know this, but those are the kinds of things that I have to actively push out of my mind to be able to even maintain a semblance of a friendship with somebody, to tell myself over and over,
they aren't talking about you, they aren't lying to you, they aren't trying to ruin your life.
But these are things that I actively believe are true almost every day of my life. Hi, Editing June here, and while we're froze on this lovely screenshot of my face, I wanted to quickly talk about disassociation. And for me, that's when my mind leaves my body when I'm angry or upset, and I can't control my words or my actions. And it's almost as if I'm watching a movie or a play and I'm an audience member and my body and my mouth is the actor that I'm watching. So it's really scary. So like I said, I know this is a lot and I know this has been a very heavy video, but I did just want to get out there sort of the basics about what a personality disorder is, how they're classified, what the symptoms of BPD are, and how it really manifests in real life in my life. I hope you're more curious about this. I hope you've learned a little bit more than you knew before. And I really hope that you're still actively inquisitive and you want to learn more about this. Because like I said, there is going to be many, many more episodes in this series on this channel. The next episode I want to put out is how BPD and other personality disorders are portrayed in the media, on TV, in the news, in movies, and really debunk a lot of the myths that we see and talk about the stigma that those kinds of media create for people who have personality disorders and true mental illnesses. And like I said, I think every symptom of BPD will have its own episode. So I will go so much more in depth with each of those symptoms and really give real life examples, situations that have happened to me, anonymously, of course, and trying to be as cognizant of privacy and identifying factors as possible. I do want to bring on some guests, and I think I will at some point, so stick around for that. But yeah, if you
enjoyed this, if you think it's helpful, if you think it's useful in some way,
please like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this with people that you think it may help, and stick around for more hopefully enlightening, entertaining, informative videos. But yeah, sorry that was so much. Thank you for watching. Bye. Why does it look like a bird is just gonna land in my head right now? Man, that Rogaine is causing a lot of baby hairs. This is what you get. I sound like this, I look like this, it is what it is. I'm sorry. Did I even say my name in this video?